Simultaneous karma Uttavardhani Shivadravastamanya Sarvasiddhiho Oma Guru Vajradhara Simultaneous karma Uttavardhani Shivadravastamanya Sarvasiddhiho Oma Guru Vajradhara Smati Muni Shasane Karma Uttavardhani Shri Vajravasamanya Sarvasiddhihum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Muni Shasane Karma Uttavardhani Shri Vajravasamanya Sarvasiddhihum Jetsun lama tu che chen nyanda tala si 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 su su gepe she sa tala tendu su oyu sungi na wat se du su si chinine solwa te petse chin kulu usu le shune yela sampe tu tu malupa git para chingelo yepe shapetse yusu le shune Ion susupadan itu chivora chingelo denis ne kukutu neos pemele tu le shune nekeke kukshishin nekete la tu para chingelo nilla chala chapada nepashivada lupa me dunge tu para chingelo ne seraptam cheta chinku Cetu, ne chiame Lama Michel, tu ce giacchita la si suso, nam tata ciala, cezun la me tu ce ragone, me tu ne porto parasho, che wa kundu yada lamata, dreme cicchi pela lucici, sada langhe io terrapsone, Dodge jangi ko parnurto sho yuke kudanda gilu pak yuke sundanda genga pak yuke tutanda gi nyerme chitu chingilo mak yuke kudanda gilu Makyuke sundandagi, makyuke tutandagi, tunirme chitu chingi allo. Muni Mahamun Amunye Soha O Muni Amuni Mahamuni Shakyamunye Soha O Muni Amuni Mahamuni Shakya Amunye Soha. Good morning. There's lots of room here up front if anybody needs. I see people are still arriving. Today, before Hello, hello. Before anything else, hello. And to begin, I want to say that I'm really happy that here with us is also Venerable Anaruddha, who's a Theravada monk from Sri Lanka who lives in Switzerland. And before beginning, I'd like to ask him to um, to to do some prayers in the in the Theravada tradition.
නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස නමෝ තස්ස භගවතු අරහතෝ සම්මා සම්බුද්දස්ස ඉතිරිසෝ භගවාරං සම්මා සම්බුද්ධෝ විඤ්ඤාචරණ සම්පන්නෝ සුගතෝ ලෝකවිදු අනුත්තරෝ පුරිස ධම්ම සාරතේ සත්තා දේව මනුස්සානං බුන්දෝ භගවාත්තේ ස්වාක්ඛාතෝ භගවතා ධම්මෝ සම්දෙට්ඨකෝ අකාලිකෝ ඒහි පස්සෙකෝ ඕපනයිකෝ පච්චත්තම් වේති තම්බෝ විඤ්ඤෝ ඒතේ සුපටිපන්නෝ භගවතෝ ශාවක සංඝෝ උජුපටිපන්නෝ භගවතෝ ශාවක සංඝෝ ඥායපටිපන්නෝ භගවතෝ ශාවක සංඝෝ සාමීති පටිපන්නෝ භගවතෝ ශාවක සංඝෝ යදිදං චත්තාරි පුරිස යුගානි අට්ඨ පුරිස පුංගලා ඒස භගවතෝ ශාවක සංඝෝ ආහුනේයෝ පාහුනේයෝ දක්ඛිනේයෝ අංජලි කරණේයෝ අනුත්තරං පුඤ්ඤක්ඛෙත්තං ලෝකස්සාතේ ඒතේන සච්ච වජ්ජේන සොත්තිතේ හෝතු සම්බදා ඒතේන සච්ච වජ්ජේන සබ්බ රෝගෝ විනාස්සතු ඒතේන සච්ච වජ්ජේන හෝතු තේ ජය මංගලං කරණීය මත්ත කුසලේන යං ත්වං සන්තං පදං අபிසමෙච්ච සක්කෝ උජුච සුජුච සුවචෝ චස්ස මුදුවනතිමානී සන්තොස්ස කෝච සුබරෝච අපකිච්චෝච සල්ල උක උත්තේ සන්තින්ද්‍රයෝච නිපකෝච අපගබ්බෝ කුලේසු අනනුගින්දෝ නචකුද්ධං සමාචරේ කිංචේන විඤ්ඤුපරේ උපවදේයුං සුඛිනෝ වාකේමිනෝ හොන්තු සම්බේ සත්තා භවන්තු සුඛිතත්තා ඒකේචි පාන භූතත්තේ තසාවාතාවරාවා අනවසේසා දේගාවායේ මහන්තාවා මජ්ජිමා රස්සකානුකතුලා දිට්ඨාවායේව අද්දෙත්තා ඒච දුරේ වසන්ති අවිදුරේ භූතාවා සම්භවේ සේවා සම්භේ සත්තා භවන්තු සුඛිතත්තා Naparo parang nikumbeta nati manyeta kata jinang kante Vyarosana patiga sanya nanya manyasa dukkha micceya Mata yata niyang puttang ayusa eka putta manurakke Evampi sabbha bhutesu manasang bhavaye aparimanang mettanca sabbha lokasming manasang bhavaye aparimanang Uddhang adoca tiriyanca asangvadang averang asapattang Tithang charang nisingnova sayanova yavatassa vigata middo Tethang sating aditteya brahmametang viharang idamau Dittinca anupagamma silava dassanena sampanno Kamesu vineya gedang nahi jatu gabbaseyang punarete etena sacca vajjena sottite hotu sambada etena sacca vajjena sabbarogo vinassatu Etena sacca vajjena hotu te jaya mangalang sabbitiyo vivajjanto sabbharogo vinassato mate bhavattantarayo sukhi digayuko bhava bhavatu sabbha mangalang rakkantu sabbha Devata sabba buddhanubhavena sada sotte bhavantu te bhavatu sabba mangalang rakkantu sabba devata sabba dhammanubhavena sada sotte bhavantu te Bhavatu sabbha mangalang rakkantu sabbha devata sabbha sanghanubhavena sada sotte bhavantu te. May you be peace, may you be happy, may you be liberated, may you be liberated, may you be liberated.
I'm very happy that we've begun today, this moment of introduction, the introduction to Buddhism, with these words recited by Venerable Anuruddha, because they're the same language in which Buddha spoke, which is Pali. And this was the common language in India. There's Sanskrit, which was spoken by, let's say, the nobles, those with a certain level of preparation and study in the higher castes, and instead the common spoken language was Pali. And what Buddha did at the time, which was not at all common, because most of the religious ones were spoken in Sanskrit. Instead, Buddha chose to teach in Pali, and instead, when he
spoke to kings and other sort of higher castes who spoke in Sanskrit, but he chose to speak the common language, the language spoken by most. So beautiful. After 2,500 years, more or less, today the same words arrive to us, and to follow the same tradition from the time of Buddha. What happens is, so Buddha, what would happen is Buddha never went to anyone to teach, like saying, you need to know this, for example. But it was always based on question and answer. And so he would go somewhere and he would meet someone, and that person would ask a question. And so one of the rules that was handed down century after century is that he who teaches cannot teach without having been requested, and after the request, after the third request, one has to teach that if, of course, he knows the answer and has the conditions to answer. So the Tibetans, what they did is they created, let's say, some habits, some habits to maintain this tradition. Today, it works. I mean, I don't think anybody here is forced to be here. If you've come here, it's from your own free will. So I don't need to convince anyone to go in one direction. And this is one of the foundations of Buddhism: is there's no the forcing. So that's also why we do at the beginning of the teachings, there's a prayer to ask for the teachings, and then another recitation, a small verse that reminds us of why we're here, to generate our motivation. In a few words, and the motivation is, I want to listen to the teachings of Buddha because I want to develop my own qualities, to get out of my own cycle of suffering, to then be able to help others do the same, just in a few words. So to maintain the tradition, to follow this tradition, we are going to do these two brief, it's not, prayer is not the right word. Unfortunately, when we translate, we use the words in our own language that maybe don't correspond correctly to the original thought in Tibetan. Because when we say prayer, we have this idea of asking. And in reality, these are motivational verses. They're verses to help direct our minds in one way or another, and not actually a request for something. So we're going to do these two parts quickly, and then we'll begin the teachings. Sangye Shintu Mitne Ulwarki Drolunam Dashimla Charajo Etama Guru Ranam Mandala Kanyatayami Chodan suke chonam la chancho partu tanye kyapsuchi nage chinsun kipet sonam gi drola penchira sange tuparsho sange chodan suke chonam la chancho partu tanye kyapsuchi Dage chinsun gepet sonam gi drola penchira sange druparsho sange chodan soge chonam la chanchu partu tani kyapsuchi
Dagi chinsungi pet sonamgi, drola penshira sange druparsho. In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay. I wanted to begin today with a verse that is said to have been spoken by Buddha. It says Danyi Danyi Dagi Danyi Danyi Chayin, and the translation would be something like, I am my own protector, I am my own enemy. Protector in the sense what brings us joy, what is good for us, what gives us happiness, and enemy instead is he who brings us suffering. So when we say, I am my own protector, I am my own enemy, it starts from the fundamental principle, which is we are responsible for ourselves. In every sense, it's a little bit like, once it's said that someone went to Buddha and to ask Buddha what he thought about the gods. Let's remember that in India, about 2,500 years ago, the world religious view that was present was polytheistic, where there's Brahma, Indra, etc. And so someone went to Buddha and asked him what he thought of the various gods, and what Buddha said, what he answered, as is said, says, I'm not here to tell you that a god or if many gods exists. This is not my task. What I'm here to tell you that independently of them, or of their existence or not, your happiness or your suffering depends on you and no one else. So he doesn't get into the subject of one or many gods. He started by saying that we all, at the basis, want to be happy. That's what makes us. That is a common among us. I mean, anywhere we go, any person we meet, no one wants to suffer. Everyone wants to be happy, and this is common for all of us. Even if it seems crazy that each one of us, without exception, does everything that he does, thinking that it's the best thing for his own happiness, guided often by one's own ignorance. But each one of us, we do what we do, thinking really that it's the best thing for our happiness, for the I and the my. But not when, I mean, we are not all-knowing ones, so often we do something, we think it's the best, but it brings, undesirable results in any case. We are responsible directly for our own happiness, each one of us. And the way, the choices we make, the way we act, what influences this creates our own reality. And then little by little we'll talk more about this. But at the beginning, Buddha says, I'm not here to tell you I'm not here to talk about aspects of one God or many gods. No, we're here because we want to be happy and we don't want to suffer, and it depends on each one. And then there are different questions that are very important.
I'm convinced that very often the questions are worth much more than the answers. Because when we ask ourselves certain questions, often we don't have an immediate response, but that sincere question takes us along a path. And this is very important. So when we say, I am my own protector, I am my own enemy, the questions that come out are, number one, I mean, what does it mean to be well? What do I want? What do I mean? What does it mean to protect myself? And on the other hand, I mean, who are these enemies? What is suffering? What is it that is harmful, that hurts me? Because we all, as we just said before, I mean, we want to be happy and we don't want to suffer. This is the same for everyone. The fundamental difference is where I project my happiness and where I project my suffering. In other words, what do I want and what do I not want? Because that principle, strength, or force in our life that pushes us or guides us is desire. And maybe someone has already heard that desire should be abandoned. We should eliminate desire. And then, here we have another problem of translation, because what do we mean by desire, and in which context? Even in Tibetan language, what happens is that same word in a different context, changes completely its meaning. And so sometimes it makes me smile. I mean, some translations, when I see some translations, when you can see someone's used a dictionary to make a translations, and now, for example, there's like applications for dictionaries in Tibetan that are very easy. And then if you read some kind of translation that doesn't really make sense, and then you go to look at the dictionary, you see that they've used the first word that came out. But in Tibetan, sometimes you take one word and there are like 15 different words in Italian or English, because it changes greatly depending on the context. When we say dukkha in Tibetan, which refers to desire, it has different meanings depending on the context. What should be abandoned is the projecting our happiness onto something that in reality cannot sustain it. Or rather, I invest my energy into something that at the end is not able to sustain that state of well-being and peace that I want. But that strength of wanting something, that strength and desire of that strength of wanting something, which in some contexts the term aspiration is used, but in poor words, let's say, it's a desire, it's a wanting something, it's that energy of going towards something. I mean, it's fundamental, because in reality, at the end, at the end of the day, we do what we want, even when we're doing what we don't want to do, is because we think it's better to do that thing, because not doing that thing will bring negative consequences, things that we don't want, etc., etc. But we put our energy in life in what we want. So that's why one of the most important questions that I ask myself, and I think it's important for all of us, a question to which I don't see an immediate answer, but a gradual path. It's a very simple question. The question is, what do I want? Me, what do I want? Here I am with this body and this life. We're here. We can ask ourselves 1,000 questions. I mean, why are we here? What's the meaning of life? Where did I come from? Where will I go before my birth? What's going to happen after death? We could ask ourselves 1,000 different questions. But before all of that, here, in this present moment where I am, me, what do I want? And when we ask this question, we can look for a conceptual answer. Okay, what do I want? And then we go to we try to answer with what we've learned from our parents, from what we learned when we were growing up, from our religion, our culture, etc. And then we have a kind of like ready-made answer. But how do I know what I want? But first of all, where do I put my energy? When I wake up in the morning, where do I put my energy? During the day, where do I put my energy? That's what I want. Because there are two kinds of answers when I ask myself what I want. What do I want today? Not conceptually speaking, on a spontaneous level, where do I project my happiness? What do I recognize as suffering? In other words, what do I want to avoid and what do I want to get? I mean, this is in my daily life. This is something that is spontaneous, and then there's the question of what do I want on an idealized, an ideal level. What would I like to have? Is the difference clear? Because there's a very important concept. We should always start where we are. We can't start from a place where we're not. So the closest starting point, to get to another place is where we are. It's like saying I want to get to Borobudur in Indonesia, which is this marvelous temple. We hope to quickly be able to get back to. We say, yes, I want to get there, but it's faster if you get there from Singapore, of course, but it's useless to organize a trip from Singapore to Indonesia if I'm in Italy. If I want to organize that trip, I need to start from where I am. So the closest starting point to get to any other place is where I am. And in our life path, the first important step is called the basis in Tibetan, Shi, which means recognize our resources. Who am I today? What do I possess? Without trying to idealize what I should be. Now, where am I? Who am I now? So we start by observing ourselves. Okay, here today, what do I want? Where do I put my energy in my daily life? Where do I project my happiness? Where do I project my suffering? What am I trying to avoid? Where do I try to look for a state of well-being and peace and happiness? This would be this first form of desire. This is the desire that we already have. I mean, what we want today. Then we reflect. And we're going to reflect a little bit together, which is, what I want, is that working for me or not? And then we'll see, how we could get it to work better. And then there's a whole process to develop a kind of desire. So let's start from where we are. At the basis, most of us, what we want, and of course each one is different, and I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but and I'll try to generalize a little bit. Luckily, I mean, we're very different in some aspects. At the basis, we're very, very similar. And it's also for this, that for me, the teachings of Buddha work today, too, because they talk about the fundamental aspects of human beings that go beyond just the cultural aspects. So even if more than 2,500 years have gone by and we're in a cultural context that is completely different, the teachings still apply. So we mostly, generally speaking, we project our happiness. We put our energy, in other words, we desire mostly three things. Obtain objects of desire, or rather, we try to have pleasure, obtain material things that we want, obtain recognition, recognition from others. We want to be loved. We want to be appreciated and recognized. We see that we hope our desires will come true. We want to try to obtain what we want in the most simple of ways, and we want to avoid what we don't like. So in other words, we try to obtain pleasures and we try to avoid suffering. And we try to not separate ourselves from things that we like, that we already have. So what we do is we try to obtain objects of desire. We try to avoid objects of aversion, of the things that we don't like. And we try to maintain what we do like and we already have. And if we observe, most of our life just goes around all of this. Obtain pleasures, eat what I like, this situation I don't like, I try to avoid it, this is beautiful, I need to try to do it, this I like it so much, I tried to get it, I don't want to separate from this pleasurable situation, etc., etc. So we start from this point where we say, where we want to obtain these objects of desire, we want to avoid the objects of aversion, or rather, I want to get what I want to avoid what I don't like, and I want to maintain what I already have that I like. Once I found myself at a school. I've told this story many times, but it really touched me, so that's why I repeat it so often. I was in Milan in the school called Maria Pizziconi. It's a very beautiful school. It's a public school in Milan. But it's particular within the school. It's really beautiful school. This was about 15 years ago, and at that time I had a lot more free time. So where they invited me, I would go without really knowing, who they were, what it was. And so when I get to the school that day, I find myself in front of about 200 children. It was a big school gym. Children between 5 and 7, they were all seated on the floor, on the wooden floor, and on the benches where all the teachers were. Here I was there in front of these children, and I asked the teachers what I'm supposed to do, and they said, you just talk about Buddhism. And I asked how much time, and they said, an hour and a half. I said, okay, let's try. So I started to explain the Four Noble Truths in a simple way. And so I saw that it was really beautiful that with children, when you speak to them in a certain way, and you ask questions, they all answer all together in chorus. And so everything was more or less question and answer with them. And at a certain point, I was talking about the concept of desire. The concept of desire, desire that which cannot sustain happiness. And I asked the children, is there a game, for example, that is there a toy, for example, that you'd like to have? And they all said yes. Well, and I said, did it ever happen that maybe for your birthday or for Christmas you were able to get the gift that you wanted? Yes. Were you happy? Yes. How long did that happiness of yours last? A long time or just a short time? They weren't totally convinced by their question. Some said a lot, some said just a short time. And then they said, do you still have the gift? Yes. And they said, does it make you happy like it did before? No. Do you want another toy? Yes. How long will that toy make you happy? A long time or short time? And then they were a little sad and they said just a short time. So, since children, we know that material things, obtaining material things makes us happy. It's pleasurable. I'm sure that if we go around and we give a little gift to everybody, or 5,000 euros to each person, without any kind of obligation, I'm sure that there'll be a little kick of happiness. I think so, no? But what's the problem? So for anything, maybe okay, maybe if 5,000 means nothing to you, add a couple zeros to that. But the point is that when we obtain something material on which we project a certain value, I mean, that makes us happy, sure. But after a little while, keeping contact with that object, is it able to sustain that inner state of satisfaction, or gradually does that sense of satisfaction, does it diminish? So I want this bottle so much. I'm able to get this bottle. Oh, this is my dear, lovely bottle. The longer I'm able to stay with the bottle, does that sense of satisfaction and happiness, does it grow? Or does that sense of joy and happiness, does it diminish after staying constantly with the bottle? No, it diminishes. And then until you get to the point where you're with the bottle, you have the bottle, and you don't even feel that joy anymore. But imagine how beautiful, imagine how beautiful it would be to maintain constantly that joy connected to the object that we have. Imagine all the things we've ever received and how happy we were. Just imagine that when you're with that thing, that joy comes back, So just imagine, you just attach all these things around you and you'll always be happy. But does it happen like this? No. So I have the toy, how wonderful. After a little while, what happens? It's not able to give me that same joy as before. So what do I want? I want another one. And our tendency is to change toy one after the other. Once I was with a friend in Brazil, and he was about to get on his private jet plane, and he said to me in English, the only difference between big and small boys is the size of their toys. Which he said in English to him. So what happens is we're constantly changing toys. Not because we believe really that that new toy is going to make us completely happy, but we just don't know another game. We see that when we get something, that momentarily we have a sense of pleasure, and I want to repeat that sensation of pleasure. So what do I want? I want other things. Even if we know that at the end of the day, they're not able to sustain that long-term happiness. Another thing is for sensory pleasures. I'm really thirsty. I drink water because I'm so thirsty. It brings pleasure, obviously. Any pleasure, someone we love who gives us a nice caress. But if I just keep drinking, or I keep receiving that caress after the 3rd liter of water. The more water I drink, I feel more pleasure. The more water I drink, the less pleasure I feel until it becomes suffering. Same thing. The example that I always give, someone that we love who comes and gives us a nice caress. But if that caress just goes on and on and on, like half an hour, an hour, and it just goes on and on and on, in that same the same rhythm and same intensity, I mean, that sense of pleasure just becomes suffering. So it's not the problem of the water not being good or the caress not being good. It's just that all sensory pleasures or all material things, they don't have the ability to sustain our inner states of happiness and satisfaction. And the third point has to do with recognition of our own image. I mean, when someone compliments us, how much do we like that? For me, a classic example is when we go to someone and we say, oh, you know that person, you know, maybe someone we love said this or that really nice thing about you. And then often you hear, sorry, what did you say? Can you repeat that? Obviously the person understood, but it's kind of a massage to the ego. One likes it. Oh, okay, really? That person, you know, that person did really say that? No, you know. So those little games that we play because it's pleasurable or not. We like to be recognized. You know, someone says, "Oh, good job, beautiful." We like it. But even there, I mean, receiving the same compliments, does it sustain the happiness, or after a while, does it not? No. And the trap here is that if at the beginning, if, if at the beginning, drinking water gives me pleasure, and I have a lot of water. After a while, water is not enough. Then I need sparkling water with lemon or juice. You know, the example I give for myself is, you know, I have my own theory, and I open and close parentheses. It's not a spiritual theory. It's very mundane. It's a mundane advice. If there's something that we like, on a mundane level, a person or food, on any level, and it's pleasurable to be in contact with that object, and with that object I mean, you know, something to eat, or a place we go, or a person that we meet, that we like to be with, regardless of the object. We need to maintain that kind of game of conquest and seduction. For example, I really like panettone. So where's the seduction? That it's only once a year. I know it's not very good for me, and so I look for the really good one. So there's a part of my side is the conquest. You know, I have to go look for it. It's only once a year, and then when I find that panettone once a year, it's incredibly pleasurable. But imagine that if that same pastry shop, you know, had that pastry shop all year, you know, all year long, and I just had it daily, then, so, you know, I have 365 panettones, fresh ones every day after 3 days. I wouldn't want any if I was given a fresh one every day. I mean, it wouldn't bring the same pleasure. I had this experience with mozzarella. I gave this example using mozzarella once in teachings, and disciples started bringing me mozzarella, really good mozzarella. But after a while, I just got sick of it. I couldn't stand it anymore. So if there's something that we like, it shouldn't be that easily accessible at every moment. You need that little game of seduction and conquest, even because, I mean, what determines the value of something? Not an intrinsic characteristic of the object, but the value we give it to it. Yesterday I gave the example for that same object, talking in, you know, like in economic terms. So say it costs me, if it costs 10 euros, I would give it a certain value. But if that same object costs 10,000, would I give it the same value? No. So what happens is the value that we give to things depends on the value that we attribute. It's not an intrinsic value of the object. And when we have to work hard to get an object, we give it more worth. So if there's something that we like, you know, even just something easy like food, you know, if it's something really good, we shouldn't eat it every day. We should take special time for that thing. So whatever our objects of pleasures are, and remember, this is in parentheses. This is a mundane advice. You know, this object of desire should be cultivated, because the result of obtaining result of obtaining the object of desire is dissatisfaction, because the more we have, as we all know, the more we have, the more we want. And the more I have, the less I, the more I want, the less I have, because more makes my desire great, and then the value little, less. And we see this with our senses. When more and more we're able to obtain things, then it's never enough, and we always need more to get to that same level of satisfaction, and it becomes tiresome. I've reflected on this. And with this example, I close this parenthesis. I was in now this is about 15 years ago. So in this one week, there were two different situations. I was at lunch with someone who liked drinking wine, and then at lunch there was also someone who was satisfied with any kind of wine, and never asked, what kind of wine it was or where it came from, the year. And so I was, in that same week, I was with friends, who were doing a wine tasting. I wasn't, because I don't drink, but I was laughing because this one was saying, "Oh, this one's good, and here it smells like this, and the color's like this." Everyone around me, everyone's doing this, and I was observing, and I saw that at the end of the day, who's having more pleasure, the one who's satisfied with just any wine, or the one who needs to find the certain type of wine to reach that level of pleasure. From my point of view, developing one's senses is a real trap. I saw that, for example, in India, any what we're looking for is, what we really want is that inner sensation of satisfaction. And the more we're able to get these objects of desire, and the more refined our senses, the more complicated it is to get to that sense of satisfaction. Then we need stronger and stronger and stronger stimuli to get there, and we see this in every sector. So, on a very mundane level, because the reality, reality is that we do have mundane pleasures. We're not all in a mountain cave meditating all day. So on a very simple piece of advice is to maintain a relationship of conquest and seduction with your objects of pleasure, like the example I gave of the panettone, and don't take it for granted, because after a while, if you take something for granted, it loses its value. What determines the price of something is the supply and demand, and it's the same thing for in our life and our way of relating with the things in our daily life. Okay, let's close parentheses. What happens then? So we project our happiness onto the things we get materially, our physical pleasures, a recognition of our image. And as we said before, it's not that these are bad things in and of themselves, but unfortunately, they're not able to sustain a state of satisfaction, of well-being. So at least I've never known anyone who was able to live in an inner state of peace and satisfaction, of well-being on a stable, constant level through the development of material things. And I've met many people who had money enough for for this life and many, many to come if they were able to take it with them. Those who were famous and well learned and had to. I remember once someone came to me and said, I have a problem. Can you help me? I said, what's wrong? He said, I have money. I have enough. It was someone who was very, very wealthy. So there's nothing. There's nothing that I wouldn't be able to buy. That's not the problem. He said, I have a beautiful family. I have a wife I love, beautiful children. We get along. We're happy together, and my health is fine too. I have but I'm deeply dissatisfied. I have an inner. I woke up during the night with anxiety. In the end, I just don't. I'm not well, and I don't know what to do because I've tried to buy everything already. The people around me are beautiful. The situations are beautiful. I've tried all the pleasures, and at the end, it's not enough. There's something is missing. So at least this person, had this awareness. But I've met so many others who do nothing other than changing the toy, and each time the toy is bigger and more complex, and always trying to fill that inner void of dissatisfaction and malaise. So in our small way, I mean, we can see that this way of playing doesn't work. It's important for us to observe all of this with ourselves. So projecting our happiness onto these things, momentarily they work. After a while, no, they just don't. So, avoiding things we don't like, is it possible or not? Can we avoid in our lives? Can we avoid sickness? No. Can we avoid, that it's too hot or it's too cold? Can we avoid, avoid people around us behaving in a way we don't like, or that the world is in a way that we don't want? No. So what happens? I mean, is it possible to avoid what we don't like? Completely no. Is it possible to not be separated from what we do like? As someone we love, for example, sooner or later I need to be separated from that person. A beautiful place that I go, sooner or later I need to be separated from that place. Regardless of the situation that I like, sooner or later I need to be separated from it. Yes, I do. So this so-called illusion of being happy by obtaining objects of desire and avoiding objects of aversion and maintaining the things we like is just an illusion. It's a trap. So the first question that we ask you, what do I want? Where do I project my happiness today? Where do I project my suffering today? Is it in my inner life, or do I project it onto an external context? Just summarizing, I believe that our greatest desire is for the reality around us to be the way we want it to be. Our greatest attachment is for reality around us to be the way we think it should be. For example, has it ever happened that you've suffered because someone around you is not the way you think they should be? Has it ever happened that you've been upset that because a person is not doing what you think he should do, or is not the way you think he should be? I'd say yes. No? And if we see very often, we suffer more do we suffer for how the person is, or because the person is not the way we think they should be. One of the greatest desires, attachments that we have in life is for the reality to be, the world to be, the people to be the way we think they should be. And the crazy thing is that it just doesn't work. It just can't work. So what happens is, even, sorry if I'm a little boring, just going round and round the same thing, but if we're not able to see where we put the energy in our lives, it'll be difficult for us to actually choose mindfully where we want to put our energy with awareness. Because I don't want here to talk about far away philosophical things, even if I like it so much. But we need to look at a very practical aspect of our lives, and the first point is to ask ourselves what we do. And to get to the point, let's just imagine the following. Just allow ourselves for a minute to imagine and observe. Observe your own lives. Or let's do the opposite. Let's start with, let's give another example. The example of the genie in the lamp. Imagine that at a certain point we find a lamp like Aladdin, but a Tibetan style lamp, because the Aladdin's lamp give you 3 desires. Instead, here this lamp gives you 2 possibilities. So the genie comes out and says, you have 2 possibilities and you need to choose. The first possibility, the genie tells you, I can give you everything you want, materially speaking. Just try to imagine for a minute. How would you want your body to be? I want to be taller, shorter, younger, older. I want my nose to be different. I want my hair in a certain way. I want to be a woman. I want to be a man. Everyone has his own idea. We can change our body the way we want it. Obviously, remember that it's just then it's forever. You don't need to change after that. So how do you want your body? Materially speaking, what do you want? The house where you live, how do you want your house to be? Or how many houses do you want to have? You want a house in the mountains, the house at the seaside, the house in the city. Okay, the houses are far, so I need a helicopter. How much money do you want to have? Think of a number and multiply it by 1,000,000. The people around you, what kind of people do you want around you? How do we want to live? And try for a minute just to dream. Allow yourself to do that. And then the genie says, okay, in this first possibility, just imagine this dream, and in a second I can make this a reality. Just you open your eyes and it's true. But there's always a but. Inside, I can't do anything for you. Your fears, you keep them. Your anxiety, your sense of dissatisfaction. Whatever you have inside you, I can't touch any your dramas or whatever you are inside. I can't change that. But in the second possibility, the genie says, in this the second choice is the following. Just imagine for a minute your life as it is today, in this moment. The body is what it is. Your material situation wouldn't change. It's what you have today. Exactly. The people did you share your life with are the same. Your job is what you have or the one you don't have. Your life is the same. I can't, so I don't change anything about your life. But in the second choice, I can take some things away and add a few. I can take away your fear and your anxiety or dissatisfaction, and I can give you joy, inner peace, satisfaction, love. I can eliminate your selfishness and make you more altruistic, help you develop wisdom, so you feel in harmony with yourself and with others inside. Which would we choose? Some people tell me, okay, maybe a little bit of both. If a little bit of both, it means that we don't trust that second choice. But if we just stop for a minute, of these two, which one do we want? If we say that we want the first one, where are you putting your energy? Are you putting energy in the first or in the second one? Are you putting energy in the first one? Okay. But if we get to the conclusion that what we want is the second one, because what we want is to be happy inside, and I recognize that the external conditions have an influence, but it's not enough. And I can't talk on behalf of everyone because I don't know you all, so closely. But let's say that most of us, all of us, we have all the external conditions. Nothing. We're not missing anything. Maybe my car isn't very new, or I'd like a bigger house, or my cell phone isn't the latest model. For most of us, of course, I can't talk for everyone, but our problem is we have too much. But the question is, what do I want? Do I want an external world, where everything corresponds to how I think it should be, or do I want an inner state of balance and peace? If we're able to understand that we really want the second one, because I've understood that externally I cannot resolve everything. There's a text. There's a Buddhist text by Shantideva called Bodhisattva Charavatara, where there's a verse makes the following analogy. It's not possible to cover the entire surface of the earth with leather. Just imagine, if we need to walk, there are sharp stones, and it would hurt. So how do you cover the entire surface of the earth with leather? It's not possible. But if you make comfortable leather shoes for yourself, it's possible. If we make comfortable shoes, then we can. It's as if we've covered the entire surface of the earth. Similarly, we cannot change the whole world. We cannot make everything pleasurable the way we want it, avoid every unpleasant situation. What we can do is change and transform our own way of living the world, so that by doing that we change our own experience. And in front of that, we ask ourselves the question, what am I doing? Where am I putting my energy to make the world the way I want it? Or am I putting energy so that I can live the world in a more pacific, more peaceful, balanced way, independently of where I find myself? Once I was around 18 years old. It was 99. I was the first time I came to Albagnano, and I was in the car. I was coming from India. I was I can't remember if, and I was living in India at the time, and so driving from Milan with Gabriella and Francesco. They were driving me, and I remember it was nighttime, and it was raining, and he said, "Oh, let's go along the lake, even though even if it's raining." And as I was driving around the lake, I had a kind of insight, when the light bulb goes off in Portuguese, in Brazilian Portuguese, they say. Quando cai la ficha, so like when the token falls for those old telephones. So when the token falls, when the light bulb goes off, we say in English. So at a certain point, we just understand something differently. And in that moment, I had this kind of insight that was very simple but very important. And I don't know why it was in that moment, but I said, okay, problems exist, and they will always exist. And when I understood that, problems exist and they will always exist, I said, oh, wonderful. Oh, I can relax. Because, what was I doing? I was continuously trying to resolve problems with this illusion somewhere that it was all going to be fine. Once that problem is finished, it'll be fine. Once I finish that, it'll be fine. But at the end of the day, what happens? I mean, what problem is resolved, and then at least another one opens up. And the crazy thing is when a problem is resolved and we don't see another one come up, we actually create a problem. I've seen many situations where everything was fine, and then people try to find things that are just not okay. Instead, when we have more important, serious problems, the smaller ones evaporate. I remember I was in India, maybe 97, I can't remember exactly what year. We were traveling with Lama Michel, about 60 people from all around the world, and we had a bus accident, actually. Unfortunately, some people, those who got hurt were actually Lama Michel and his secretary, Kosi. Rinpoche lost 2 teeth. Kosi broke her arm in many places. It wasn't such a light accident. And I was in the first place of the bus. I was thrown and hit my head. But at a certain point, so we all get off the bus. And I remember I learned 2 things in that occasion. The first thing is, we were in the countryside. We got off the bus, and there was an amazing night sky. When I saw that starry sky, I was filled with joy. And I said, "Wow, this is so beautiful." And I said to people around me, "Have you seen how beautiful the sky is?" And they looked at me as if I were crazy. How can you be looking at the sky? Haven't you seen, don't you see what we've just had? As I said, it's not that the accident is happening now. It has already happened. Now we're here waiting for help, waiting for something to happen. In the meantime, why can't I enjoy the star-filled night sky? And something that Lama Michel taught me, even in very difficult situations, as he said, we need enjoy. It's not because there's a problem, a difficulty, that one can't see beautiful situations and enjoy them. After a while, so they come to get us. It's a very long story. We get to the hotel, and when you travel with a lot of different people, with different social classes, different cultures, every time we got to a hotel is a chaos. some say the hotel is too simple. Those who say it's too expensive, or those who want to be alone, those who want to share the room and not with that person. It was always lots of problems, but I was already living in India. We can get to, when I get to once we arrived to the hotel, and I thought, oh no, this is not going to be easy. Once I saw the hotel from the outside, okay, so I stayed outside in the car a little bit. Just at least I let those, I let the difficulties, get resolved a little bit, and I just take the room that they give me. So 5 minutes later, I go in. Normally, we need at least an hour to do all the check-ins. So I get in 5 minutes later, and there's nobody in the reception. Everybody's in the room, and it's and that. It's not that there wasn't hot water in that hotel. No, there wasn't any water, and there wasn't, the rooms were for at least 5 people together, and I didn't hear a single complaint. Everyone quiet in their rooms. And my question was, okay, how, we were in how, I was just asking myself, how is it that nobody saw all these problems? Because there was a bigger problem. And once I was talking to with the administration, I was talking with those of the managers and the administration of the center, and there were some problems, and I thought, oh, how wonderful that we have these problems. And then I thought, it is because it's a sign that we don't have larger problems. Because if we had larger problems, we wouldn't be talking about these small, these details. Because what's our experience when we have problems? Serious problems of health and our survival. Then all these small things that just have no weight. So when things are going fine, our health is fine, and we have, economically we're fine, then we create many small problems. So problems exist, and they're always going to exist, so we can relax. And I developed my own technique that I'm going to share with you now. So once I saw that problems exist and will always exist, I think this works. I mean, you need to try it yourself. So what I saw is this: that when a problem ends or gets resolved, another one begins, and each one of us, we have it's like a similar type of problems that they keep repeating. So what I saw is, if when a problem is once a problem gets resolved, so maybe I keep some problems. If I'm used to a certain type of problem and I have that problem, maybe I don't resolve it completely because I know how to manage that problem. But then I know that if I resolve that, another one's going to come out. So why does that happen like this? Because in reality, it's not that the difficulties that we have in life, these so-called problems, it's because they don't come just from the outside, but every situation that we live touches something that's inside of us. With our life experiences, our inner conflicts and unresolved aspects or unresolved problems. And if those conditions bring out something that's unresolved inside, it brings out suffering. So problems will always exist as long as I have jealousy and arrogance and selfishness and ignorance and nervousness, etc., etc. So my objective is no longer to resolve all my problems. Let's remember that problems, problems, problems exist to be resolved. You know, otherwise they wouldn't be problems. I'm the first to look for solutions, but the real solution is not changing the situation, but changing our way of facing the situation. The real solution is when we can be in front of the same situation and not suffer anymore. When we have an inner state of balance and satisfaction and peace, where in front of the same situation, we don't lose our balance and inner peace and satisfaction. That's our the higher objective. So between these two possibilities given by the genie, which one would we choose? If we choose the second one, this brings us the second question. Well, first of all, genies don't exist. But if I want that, where am I going to put my energy? As Shantideva said, still in the Bodhisattva Charavattara, he would say, what is more important for you, your inner peace or what other people think of you? I mean, our rhetorical answer would be, oh, inner peace. And then he asks us, well, then why do you lose your inner peace when people speak badly of you? Because in reality, you know, what other people think of us is more important to us. Otherwise, why would we lose our inner peace? So what happens is, once we're able to see that what we want is to be well with ourselves so that I can be well with others, what I want is a state of inner balance, satisfaction, with the awareness that satisfaction doesn't come by obtaining objects of desire. Satisfaction comes by giving the right value to what we have. It's an inner attitude. It's not a result of an external situation. I don't know if that's clear. Because the example that we gave before, the value that we gave, it depends on the value. The value of something depends on the value we give. You know, often he who has less is often happier because he gives more value to what he has. So satisfaction is a key, one of the key points to our happiness. So what do I want? If what I want is balance, satisfaction, an inner sense of peace, and what I don't want is to feel anxiety, fear, anger, etc., etc. At this point, I need to put my energy there. Once someone told me a joke, and the joke is like this. So he went to the United States. He was invited to the United States, and apparently the joke was told by the Dalai Lama. So imagine the master from the East who comes to the West for the first time to teach and goes to a family. Goes to a family's house. You know, could be anywhere in the West or modern world. That's it. So is there. It sits. It's a beautiful house. Sits down for food. A beautiful display of a table of food. Everything's working, and it almost seems like a pure land here. Everybody seems so happy and everything's working so well here. So this must be the right way. And at a certain point, goes to the bathroom and a little bit curious, and it just opens the medicine cabinet and says and like antidepressants or medicine to go to sleep, medicine to go to the bathroom, and says, okay, here's the problem. So if we look at the world where we live, I mean, how many people do you know? You don't need to raise your hand, but we can do the opposite. Is there anyone? Is there anyone here who doesn't know someone who needs to take a pill to go to sleep or to digest food or go to the bathroom, etc.? And without judgment, but it's just a sign. I mean, if we see the increase in the use of antidepressants, the increase is frightening, So in our society, everybody's comfortable. Nobody's, hungry or thirsty or without a house. But we see that it's just not enough. It's not that we're in a society where we're satisfied and happy and peaceful because the external conditions are favorable. So what's the point? It's important to invest energy in that which generates satisfaction and well-being, which is an inner situation. It's not external, but this mind needs to be cultivated, needs to be taken care of. And let's go back to what we said before. This expression, I am my own protector, I am my own enemy. But how do we live? My happiness, does your happiness depend on you or on external conditions? In our daily life, am I my own protector, or is the world around me my protector? We know that theoretically we are our own protectors, but very often, where do we project our happiness? In the world around us. So we say, I am not my own protector because my own happiness doesn't depend on me. It depends on whether my husband is like this, or whether my child does this, or if the government does this, or it depends on if this happens like this, or if this person does this or doesn't do this, etc., etc., etc. Our way often of living is, I'm not my own protector. And I'm not my own enemy, because if we asked ourselves, spontaneously speaking, without philosophizing, how do we live? Who are our enemies? Why do we suffer? For our way of living the world, or for the reality of the world around us? Normally, we project onto the world around us. So our way of living is, I'm not my own protector. I am not my own enemy. I am a victim of the world. Every time we have a feeling of anger, anxiety, or fear, we have something or someone on which to project this feeling. This is how it works. We have this. We say, how is it that I'm feeling this? And we have this tendency, excuse me if I'm just so direct, forgive me, but we have this tendency of victimizing ourselves. I know that I shouldn't get angry, but look what happened. So we have this tendency. So the path that I'm trying to follow, the one that Buddha transmitted to us, is that first of all, one of the first steps, if we want to follow this path that Buddha has taught, that goes beyond formally being Buddhist or not, but first of all, the first thing is to stop victimizing ourselves, because I am my own protector, I am my own enemy. I am not a victim of the world. I am a being who interacts with the world. And when I live any situation, regardless of what it is, I don't have control over the situation, but I have control over how I live it. I don't know if that's clear. The only real thing that depends on us, on which we have control, is our discernment, our, our own attractions and aversions, our choices, our thoughts and our actions. The rest is part of a complex interdependence that doesn't depend on us. We do not have control over how other people act or the world around us, but we have a small amount of freedom over how we act. Not that big, because even even the way we act today is conditioned by our past, or the way we think, or the things we do is conditioned also by our body. You know, you just look at how how our mind changes when the hormones change for men and women. You know, I know many men where it's very clear when they're where they are in their cycle. I mean, this for all of us, mind and body go together. So what happens is our state of mind is conditioned by our body. Yes, our mental state, the way we relate with the world, is conditioned by our past, by the experiences we've lived, our experiences and the social cultural, social cultural past, how we were raised, etc. But in front of all this, in this present moment, where we are this result of this complexity of experiences that have been lived, where is our freedom of choice? It's not a lot. It's very small, actually. Sometimes we hear people say, put yourself in someone else's shoes. We see someone do something, say, well, if I were you, or if I were him or her, I would do differently. Well, let's see. If I were, let's imagine someone, anyone, if I were him or her with his or her body, his past experiences, traumas, education, mentality, is karma. Karma is just means, all the past actions done, all the actions done previously. If I were, that person, would I do differently? Probably not. But where is our free will? Where is our freedom? I'm in front of a situation. I mean, we have the choice of, doing or not doing. Yes. We have the choice. Shall I go? Shall I stay? We have the freedom to choose to feel a certain emotion. Once we feel an emotion, shall I show it or should I stay quiet? Our freedom is very small, but it's very powerful. Because it's these small actions, small thoughts and words that shape our being. Every small experience has an enormous influence, power in our life. Every word, every experience, every choice, every thought. They're not just important, they're determining. And that's where we can change. We wake up in the morning. Should I stay in bed a little bit longer? Should I get up to meditate? Okay. When I go to bed, should I put the alarm on a half an hour earlier, or shall I count on staying in bed longer? I mean, we have space of freedom. I don't have the choice of being free from my past, from all the from the education that I have, or the worldview that I've generated. But the beauty of our freedom is that we are interdependent beings. We are beings that are in constant transformation, and the transformation is the fruit of interaction. Anything anything that transforms is because it's interacting. I mean, we are our body, our mind, our being is in constant transformation. This transformation comes through interaction. If I interact in one way, I'm going to transform in one way, and if I interact in a differently, I'll transform in that way. Our our mind, our body, they're malleable. So depending on how we interact, we are creating conditionings in one way or another. We're made of habits, but we can reinforce our habits or we can weaken them. We can create new habits or eliminate them. Even still Shantideva in the same text, speaking Tibetan, says there's nothing that is not easy once you've gotten used to it. At the beginning, it's difficult, and I repeat and I repeat and I repeat, I repeat, I repeat, I repeat, I repeat, and go again, repeat, and keep going, repeat. But sooner or later, it becomes easy, and then it becomes spontaneous. We are made of habits. So what happens, what are the habits that are harmful, that are bad for us? Physical, to begin with, the way we eat, our lifestyle, the way we sleep, physically, the things that I do that are harmful to me. Verbally, what are my habits in my way of speaking? And mental habits. Remembering that many of those mental states of being, from anger to jealousy or fear or arrogance, etc., they are not results of external conditions, but they're results of inner states of being that are projected onto external things, because let's take the example of anger, which is a classic example. So if I get angry, do I see the anger as a result of a situation, or as an inner habit? I've seen it's an inner habit, and I've seen many people. It makes me smile a little bit somehow. I see maybe people who had this strong habit of reacting with aggression, and at a certain point, I saw in many times, I saw this happen with people where everything was fine, but I could see that the person is like looking for a situation to, to make that explode, and that first opportunity to have that feeling come out, they would do it because there's this inner tension, so that this, we're looking for some kind of condition to explode and make that feeling come out. So all the mental defilements, these are inner conditionings, inner habits. And on the other side, the balance and satisfaction and joy, generosity, love, awareness, wisdom, these are also habits. These are also conditionings. So what becomes important is, what are the inner characteristics that I want to cultivate, and which are the ones that I want to abandon. This is where we should start. We start where we are. A few days ago, I was talking to a young person who wanted advice. Says, I don't know what to do in my life. It's not clear to me what I want to do. And what I think is that it's very often, when people people come to me and ask what they should do in their life, as a profession. I can't tell you what to do. Well, what I want is, let's just shift the question a little bit, but not what I want. What do I want to be? But not what do I want to do, but what do I want to be? No, because what I want to do has, depends on many external conditions. Maybe someone wants a big family or a small family, or the opportunities of work, or but instead the question should be, what kind of person do I want to be? Do I want to be satisfied, or or dissatisfied? Am I someone who wants to be filled with joy? Or do I see everything that's going wrong, and I complain? But how do I want to live the world? Do I want to be in conflict or in harmony? Do I want to be satisfied or dissatisfied? Do I want to be in peace or do I want to be angry? And it's not that if I say, if I want to be in peace and not angry, it's not that just by snapping your fingers that it happens. But then the question is, okay, how can I stop cultivating those bad habits, those negative conditionings, and how can I cultivate the positive habits? Because remember, we're made of habits, and in these days where they're the Olympics, I think today's the last day. I mean, when you see an Olympic athlete, how many times did they need to do that exercise? 100. I was imagining during these Olympics, these kids who just worked so hard and trained crazy levels, and to get to the Olympics, in this Olympics, for us, they moved the Olympics, 1 year. For us, it's nothing. But for those athletes who got to like the maximum levels of their abilities, and then the Olympics were moved a year later, and had to maintain that high level of of abilities. That couldn't have been easy, and all that training requires so much effort. I don't understand much about sport, but apparently when one trains, like when one is a professional athlete, what happens is that every day the athlete does a little bit more than the previous day. So for example, if I'm running, I want to every day run just a little bit faster. And if one day I miss a training, the following day, to maintain that level of growth in my training, I need to put in twice as much effort. If I stop for 2 days, then I have to put in 4 times as much effort. So if I did before in 10 and then I miss a day, I'm back at 9. If I miss for 2 days, then I go back to 6. So That's why those who train like this can never miss a training, because a missed day of training is like taking a step backwards and then two step backwards. This shows us that our body and also our mind is the same thing. They're malleable. The more I do something, the easier it becomes, because we're made of habits. And the beautiful thing is that once a habit is deep, then it becomes spontaneous. But until we get to that point, we need to train. And our spiritual path, or our life path, is the same thing. I need to train to cultivate the characteristics that I want to develop and stop nourishing, stop feeding the negative ones. And here there's an important point, that when we recognize what the characteristics that we want to avoid, I give a personal example. Among many mental defilements, one of my worst is laziness. You know, those who know me say, "Oh, how can you be lazy with everything you do?" I can tell you, the definition of laziness is. I thought about this. Laziness is the union of two things: the awareness, the conceptual awareness, the importance of doing something, united to the lack of wanting to do that same thing. So what happens is, I would like to do it, but I don't feel like doing it. And I'm not saying that the things that I do without wanting. I mean, things I do with a lot of joy, but I know myself, there's certain particulars. So what happens is, how do I overcome my own laziness? The first thing is trying to not feed it. How can I not feed my laziness? It's not that I can forecast my laziness. Okay, tomorrow I'm going to be lazy, or today I'm going to be angry. No, at a certain point, when we least expect it, it just comes out. When it arises, when it manifests, when that habit manifests, what we should try to do is to not follow it, not nourish, not feed it. How? If laziness comes out and physically I do something as a result of that laziness, I don't feel like doing that, so I don't do it, I am giving more strength to laziness itself. If anger comes out and I act physically, because of that anger, it goes away stronger. It's a habit. When a habit comes up, when I have the habit of eating in a certain way, the more I eat in that way, the stronger that the habit of eating like that becomes. If I have the habit of doing something physically, just the habit becomes stronger. If anger comes out, the more I act, the more I materialize that feeling, the stronger that anger is going to become. So that habit, that emotion that comes, the first step would be awareness. The second is to not block and not follow either. So I'm not going to nourish that feeling. I'm not going to act physically. I'm not going to act verbally. I bite my tongue, but I'm just quiet. I change the subject. I just don't talk about that thing. But I'm not going to talk. Not going to talk or do, taken by these negative feelings. It's gradual. First of all, I need to be able to not follow physically, or then not follow verbally, and then finally to not not react mentally by not entering into any kind of dialogue, with the negative feeling, like, with like we shouldn't say give justification or explanations. No dialogue. No, I just wait for that feeling to pass. So I recognize that I have that inner feeling. I don't negate it, but I'm not going to follow it. Because by not following the emotion, naturally, we're weakening it. And then I try to put energy into its opposite. So someone would say, oh, well, Lama, it's tiresome. Yes, my answer is yes. But at this point, I ask myself, but, when is life not tiresome? One of my masters, one of my masters said to me, at least try to, work hard for something that's beneficial. Once I was in China, for example, my mother was had to do surgery, and a long story, we found ourselves in Beijing. She decided to do a surgery there in Beijing, and we needed a little bit. We needed around a month to be there. We were very fine. It was the first time when I was there with her. I mean, first time after many years that I had, days where I didn't have much to do. A couple of days. Some days I'd take her to the hospital. We would leave very, very early in the morning because it's a very, very big city. We were in a really nice part of the city, but it was at least, with the traffic, it was about 2 or 3 hours to the hospital. Sometimes we leave at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning to be on time. But there was a 1 week I remember we had to wait for exams, and we were just there and we didn't have much to do. And I realized something. Not doing anything all day long, I'd get to the end of the day, I was as tired as when I did a lot. And I realized that it's not true that I get tired by doing a lot of things. I get tired because when I wake up, my battery is at 100 or 80, depending on how I slept. And I go through the day and I lose battery because then I get to the end of the day and, I would be as tired at the end of the day after having done a lot. I'd be I'd be just as tired at the end of the day having done nothing compared to when I worked hard. So, when people say, oh, I can't do this, I'll get tired. Well, you're going to get tired anyway. And when I see that in our lifetime, in our life, there are things that we do that we need to work hard for. Like childhood, for example. Is it easy or difficult? I think I had a beautiful childhood, but it's beautiful in many aspects, but not always easy. We need to grow and learn how to communicate, learn how to understand things better, understand our identity. It's not that school and friends is always easy. And adolescence is easy? No, not really. After adolescence, becoming an adult, starting to work, or relationships, in the couple, or setting up family. Is this easy or difficult? It's quite difficult. And then once we're in this life and we try to maintain everything we've created, is that easy or difficult? In other words, getting married is not easy, and maintaining that marriage is not easy. And then what about when one retires and gets old? That's hard too. So from birth to death, there are things that are tiring. It's not that everything is marvelous, even if life is wonderful. But I have my own theory, and this you need to also test for yourself too. I've observed that for each one of us it's like at a certain point of life in our life we have like a certain amount of suffering to experience, and if it's not for one thing, it's for something else. So my logic is, better to work hard for something that's going to bring positive results than instead of working hard for things that don't bring any kind of positive results. So this path of changing our lifestyle and changing our habits, like the example, for example, of following a diet, for example, it's so difficult. It's changing habits, and physically and mentally changing habits, and changing habits is like walking against or swimming against the current. When we use up our energy by doing something, our energy is gone. It's not gonna come back. So dedicate as a priority in our life to create healthy and healthy, virtuous habits, mental, physical, verbal. It's tiresome, but they bring positive results. So if someone asks me if we need to put energy into the spiritual path, yes. Is it easy? No. Is it marvelous? Absolutely. Like anything, when someone falls in love, it's a beautiful experience. But to maintain a beautiful relationship between two people, one needs to invest energy, right? And absolutely. It's normal. In the same way, when we find something beautiful for us, there's this moment of following in love. I find the spiritual path is beautiful, wonderful, but now it's time to follow it. And this requires energy. And it's wonderful that it's like this. There's nothing wrong with this. But it's important. What's important is that we can do it. All of us, we have the same potential. In Buddha's lifetime, there were so many examples of there were so many people who were able to make serious changes, like Angulimala, for example, was a disciple of Buddha, and at the beginning he was actually an assassin. He was a murderer, and he had they say that his childhood was very difficult. And at some point, he was told, okay, if you want to save your parents who had already dead, then you need to make these offerings to this being, and you need to kill all of these people. You need to kill 1,000 people, and he had killed 999. And at a certain point, he found Lord Buddha, and he was there in the woods, and they were face to face. And the story says that he started running towards Buddha, and behind Buddha, and as Buddha was just walking, and instead he was running, and he couldn't catch up to him, and then he called to him and said, "Stop, stop!" He says, "I'm stopped here. The one who's not stopped is you," meaning that you're the one in the cycle of suffering, running around and around and around. Instead, Buddha had come out of that, and he touched his heart, and Buddha explained to him that his path was not the correct one to follow. And making a long story short, he changed his lifestyle. He changed his path completely, and he started following the path that Buddha transmitted. And there's a detail that always touched me, is that at the end of the life of Angulimala, he was walking with Buddha, and there was a woman who was in a lot of pain. She was pregnant, and she had a lot of pain. And this woman went to Buddha and said, "Can you please bless me. Please help me, cure me. I'm not well at all. And Buddha sees her. He looked at Angunilamala and he says, you give her the blessing. And he says, me? Me, who I'm the murderer. I'm such a bad person with everything that I have done. How can I give her the blessing? And he said, no, you put the hands on her and you say, for the power of truth. If it's true that I killed all these people and I generated all this suffering taken by my own ignorance, and that today I am aware that that was an error and that I don't want to repeat again. And if it's true that I really care about the well-being of this woman, may she be cured. And he put his hands on her and he actually does cure her of this pain. And this small anecdote shows a very important characteristics of what Buddha transmitted, which is the importance of believing in ourselves. One as a fundamental point is that each one of us, without exception, each one of us has the identical potential to develop. There's no one who doesn't have at the basis the ability to reach a state of peace and satisfaction and wisdom and love. There's no one who cannot do it. There's even a saying in Tibetan that says, by following the right path with the right amount of effort, even an ant becomes a Buddha. But where do I put my energy? Imagine an Olympic athlete. If I want to run in a certain way, I need to train. It's not, okay, today I want to watch that TV series. No, today I need to train, I need to run. Doesn't matter whether I want to or not. It's something I have to do if I want to train in a certain way. Similarly, there are some habits that we have that are not good for us. And the starting point that we also call loving ourselves, which is the first step along the path, is recognize clearly what is good for me and what is bad for me. On a physical, verbal, and mental, emotional level. And once I have this awareness of what's good for me, what's bad for me, the first step is to have the determination, the strength to avoid what is harmful and cultivate what is beneficial and good for me. This is the first step that requires a lot of effort, which is called loving oneself. So I am my own protector. I am my own enemy. So I'm going to cultivate what's good for me and abandon what is harmful to me. And here we're not saying that the conditions around us are not important. For me, I see in our life, I see like the metaphor of an object in balance. On one side there's the world around us and the behavior of other people, the place where we are, everything that has to do with our surroundings. And on the other side there's our body, and in the middle is our mind. To be in an unhealthy environment, does that take away our balance? Yes. Are we we're influenced by our surroundings and how people behave, all these aspects around us. I mean, we're strongly influenced by all of this. Are we influenced by our body, our health, from our intestinal flora to our hormones? I mean, every aspect of our body influences us. We're much more influenced by our body most people can understand or realize. But what happens? I mean, so if we live in a healthy environment with a healthy body but a sick mind, I've seen many examples of this. It's like living hell in heaven. Like also, I've met people in very, very difficult situations with very sick body, but with a healthy mind. It's like living in heaven when you're in hell. So I don't want to say, I will never say that the context in which we find ourselves or our body is not important, but what I see is that most of us already try to find, a healthy, a healthy context, a healthy body, healthy surroundings. But it's not enough. We need to take care of our mind, our habits, our inner habits. It's our mind is the most powerful resource that we have. I mean, it's one thought can destroy a pleasurable situation. Has it ever happened where you're in a situation where everything is fine, and then just one word and one thought just changes everything? You know, you see somebody like you were happy, and now what happened? Taken by sadness, and the opposite is true too. I've had the good luck of meeting many people, different people who've had such a level of mental stability that even when faced with very, very difficult situations, and I'm talking about very difficult situations, situations that go beyond what we could even imagine. I'm talking about experiences of torture, violence, or of losing all means of survival. I mean, the Cultural Revolution, the things that happened in Tibet. But the people maintain their stability and balance and joy even when faced with these extreme situations. Why? Because they have this awareness, and they've cultivated their inner qualities. So our mind, our emotions, our perceptions of the world is what determines how we live various situations. So I don't want to say that we shouldn't take care of the environment. I don't just mean nature, but I mean our family and our surroundings where we find ourselves. That's important too, and the body is important as well. But first and foremost, we need to give energy. And put energy in taking care of the mind. The body and mind always go together, but we need to cultivate our virtuous habits and try to diminish our habits that generate suffering. And here there's another point, and forgive me if I just touch on this towards the end, but for me it's very important that we are here, but sooner or later we're going to die, and it's much sooner than later. I wish everyone a long, healthy, happy, satisfied life. But the truth is that if there's a certainty in life, is that as we're born, then we will die, and that's not a problem. The problem is not dying. The problem is. It's not a problem because there's no solution to dying. I mean, it's a fact. It's not a problem. The problem is something that has a solution, and we will all die, from one condition or another. Maybe because one finishes one's life force in old age, or maybe a sickness. Not too long ago, I read an article from a scientific medicine that said in 2050 no one will die from old age. And I asked myself, but today, even today, who dies from old age? I mean, among all the people that actually my father reminds me that a great grandfather died at 103, just turned off, the energy used up. but for most, it's the car stops working because it hasn't been taken care of. If I live my life with a bad lifestyle, sooner or later, it's going to have a negative effect. But I don't see death as something negative. I see it as a natural part of life. And here we could open up the whole topic about death, which I think is one of the most important and beautiful topics. But it's not a problem. The problem is living life badly, living life as if we were immortal. Because what happens if we live as if we were immortal, then we live life as if we don't take care of the more important things. We often live life to survive comfortably. Instead, let's remember that sooner or later we're going to die, and I don't want to be reborn. I don't want to be reborn lazy. So what choice do I have to do something today to try to face this? Once someone gave me this example. It was a friend in Brazil who said that when she met Lama Ganchen, she was realizing, who she wanted to be in this life. She had had a lot of success in her career, but with Lama Ganchen, she learned who she wanted to be when she died. Which means also who you want to be today. The point is that we don't have time to lose. We don't have time to lose with silly things. There's no time for jealousy. Because we're gonna die. There's no time for envy. Sooner or later, more sooner than later, we're gonna die. There's no time for the la ni. Sooner or later, ciao. Finished. Because this isn't the way I wanted, because I would have liked, and there's just no time. I see that there are three types of suffering. There's the post-suffering, the pre-suffering, and the actual suffering. We have it's not a post-suffering, it's a re-suffering. Because that time you remember, and this happened, and you said this thing, and that person did that, and how could you have? And we feel bad again, and we're re-suffering for something that's already had something, or we're pre-suffering of tomorrow if this happens, and how am I going to manage, and I won't be able to do this and that here and there. So, let's imagine that what happens actually happens, and then you suffer twice. If it actually happens. And then there's the actual suffering in this present moment. I think, I don't have time to pre-suffer, re-suffer, and then suffer. But life is short, and our habits are created in our daily life, and I don't have time to create more jealousy and arrogance and anger. I want to be a balanced person, a satisfied person, a loving person, even because in our life, what I see is independently of how many years we will live. Independently of the fact that at a certain point in my life, that whether I find myself healthy or sick, patience will help me. Balance will help me. Satisfaction will help me. Awareness will help me. Independently of where of where I am, just patience will help me, and it's never too late. But the more time we let pass, the stronger the habit becomes. So a key point is, if I have a special opportunity, the reality that we have is a special opportunity, because it's said that to follow a spiritual path of inner growth, it requires three conditions: having materially minimum necessary, so you don't need to put all of your energy into just your daily survival, because if I wake up hungry, how am I going to meditate? How am I going to observe my behavior and reflect on my conduct? What I want to do is eat. How many people on this planet don't have the minimum necessary? Just too many. A few years ago, they said 2.5 2.5 billion that were under the poverty line, who literally didn't have food enough to eat, and didn't know don't know what they're going to have to eat the following day, the next day, and instead another few billion that are just above the poverty line, who have to work all day just to have food to eat, and then another approximately 2 billion who, of which we are a part, who, then the other condition is to have someone to guide us on a spiritual path, and the third condition is to want to follow a spiritual path. So materially speaking, we have enough, because because we have no needs. We have only too many wants. I am very sure that we have someone to guide us. We've understood. I'm not saying that Buddhism is the only way, but following these questions on who we want to become, we have someone who has followed this path and can guide us, and we have an uninterrupted lineage of those who have realized this path, and the Buddhist teachings are very, very practical. First do this and then do that. It's very didactic. It's very practical, and it's worked for others. Why would it not work for us? And I want to do it. So these conditions are not obvious. Just think about of the people we know who have, materially speaking, minimum necessary. How often do they stop to think about where their suffering comes and who they want to be in life? Is it a minority or a majority? No, it's a minority. Even this is Sunday. How many are actually here today? This doesn't make us better than anyone else. It just means that we have a special opportunity, and it depends on how we take advantage of this opportunity. I'm convinced that I'm not better than others, and if I were in other conditions, if I had other conditions, I don't know how I would react. But the point is, then I have a marvelous opportunity, and I should do everything possible to live it to the best of my ability. So I invite all of you to reflect on who you want to be, what you want in your life. That's the first question that transforms into, what do I want to have? But what do I want to, not what do I want to obtain, but who do I want to be? And in front of that, who I want to be, we should be able to imagine who we want to be, and allow ourselves to imagine, just for a minute, imagine our lives as it is with in all of its aspects, but we imagine the life, your life as it is. But just allow yourself to imagine your life without expecting things to be different from how they are, without being in conflict with yourself or with others. A life where there's harmony between thoughts and emotions and feelings, where we have awareness. There's awareness of impermanence, how things transform, where we can live in harmoniously with this world, with the world in transformation, where we can a life where we can see others and be in harmony and not be in conflict, and enjoy what we have without having that hole inside that is never satisfied. You know, you know, if it were like, if it were like this, it would be enough, wouldn't it? And we have enough. We have what it takes to be happy. So we need to cultivate these characteristics. And when people ask us, "What do you do in your life?" I mean, I try to be happy. I try to love myself, love others, and have a correct view of reality. Oh no, but no, what's your work? Oh, to work, for my for my livelihood. I'm a doctor. I work in the bank. I'm retired. I go to school. Whatever it is, but what I do, and that's not what I do in my life. What I do in my life is I try day after day to be a better person, to try to help others, to interact with others, and to help others, because the only real way of helping others is by developing myself. I mean, I see what the world needs most today are people, people who don't talk about love, but people who are examples of love and joy and wisdom and balance. We need to be what we want others to be. Because the only real way to help others is to be that thing ourselves. First, it's really the only way. It's useless that I go to you saying you shouldn't get angry when I get angry myself. It's just not going to work. If I am patience, then I can transmit patience to you. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So what do I want in my life? What do I do in my life? I try to the best of my abilities. I put my priority is to cultivate my qualities, to go against my bad habits. I try not to nourish them so that I can develop, so that I can live my life in harmony and help others do the same. That's it. Obviously, it requires energy and time and patience. There's a metaphor that Gelik Rinpoche, one of my masters, said. We know that we've gotten to the summit of a mountain only once we've gotten there. As we're walking towards the mountain, we never know if we're getting to the top of the mountain. We know it only once we've gotten to the top. And in our inner path, we don't know where we are. I mean, people sometimes say, "Lama, can you tell me where I am?" It's not, we can't measure it in kilometers that you've gotten to this point. No, it's you know it once you're there, and it requires constancy and effort. And so we can also summarize again in I am my own protector, I am my own enemy. And so I have high objectives of who I want to be, low expectations, so I'm not going to project all of this into a form or time. I don't know when or it's going to happen, and then effort. So this is my direction every day. I work towards this, and I don't have time to waste with jealousy and envy and dissatisfaction. I don't have time to waste. And when these manifest, remember, these are only habits that we do not need to cultivate. And it is possible. It's something that it's in our hands, in the hands of each one of us. The last thing, it's not. I have no idea that I don't have this idea that everyone needs to be Buddhist. And sincerely, if someone comes to me, if someone's Buddhist, not Buddhist, it doesn't. I don't care much. It's not important to me that if someone's Buddhist or not. It's important to me that someone has more awareness and relates with balance and harmony, and is able to not react with anger and arrogance, and is at peace with himself and with others. And how, the way that the person got there, is not important to me. I mean, the religion is a tool. It's not an end in and of itself. Once Buddha said, when you go from one bank to the other of a river, once you've gotten to the other side of the river, you shouldn't stay attached to the boat. And it's not that one boat is better than another. There's maybe someone swims, or someone takes a canoe, and one takes a motorboat. What's important is to get from one bank to the other, is to get there. So it's important to walk. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I don't feel like a religious person," um, you know, So for me, I'd say that Buddhism is a tool, is a life, is a path, is a life tool that works perfectly for me. I mean, I can't find any defects in it. Maybe in institutions, yes, but in the path, none. So we should make a distinction between religion, the path, the religion, and the institution. I mean, the institution needs to exist to the institution exists to support the religion, and the religion exists as a support for our spiritual path. But when the institution is no longer at the service of religion, and when the religion is no longer a support for the spiritual path, then it has no reason to exist. So we need to recognize our own aspects that don't go well, and our energy should go towards eliminating what is not beneficial for us. It's by not nourishing anger that it will diminish. It's like in the darkness, we need to bring the light, not by going against the anger, but by bringing the light. As I said before, at the beginning, there's no desire to make everyone Buddhists. But we're here with open arms to share what we've learned, what I see is of great benefit that I've received from great masters like Lama Michel Rinpoche. Mostly we're here not to become Buddhists, but to follow this path of growth that Buddha has transmitted. It's not a question of identity, it's a question of an inner path. Then if one identifies himself in this path and wants to follow it with a certain formality, that's fine too, but that's fine, but it's not the point. It's not that a Buddhist is better than someone else. What's important is how we follow our inner path. I think it's quite clear. So in front of all this, and we could deepen so many aspects, but at the basis, if someone asks, what is Buddhism, from my personal understanding is, and I can't speak on behalf of everyone, is Buddhism is a tool that allows us to follow an inner path to develop our inner qualities and overcome our conflicts and so-called mental defilements to reach a state of peace. And it's made up of three parts. Buddhism is vision, the view. So there's a whole part of the philosophy and the worldview, the explanation of everything. I like this very much. This is our paradigm. And then there's the part of conduct, which are the life rules. How to act, physically, verbally, mentally. What is beneficial, what is harmful. These are rules, that are offered, let's say, and then one can choose to follow them or not. One can even take vows. There's a vow, for example, to not kill or steal, lie, or to take substances that take away the clarity of the mind, or have an incorrect or have sexual misconduct. I mean, these are the five basic rules that Buddha said you can follow. And so it's it's a a path. And then there's the meditation is the third part. So view, conduct, and meditation to familiarize ourselves with those inner states that we should be cultivating and help us eliminate the negative ones. So Buddhism can be divided into these three parts of view, conduct, and familiarization. These tools that can help us actually realize this path. And it's open to everyone. You don't need to. Many different approaches as well. The one that we follow, the Lama Rinpoche that we have at the center, everyone is welcome, no matter where you come from, who you are. Take what you want from it. Oh, but I find another religion. Oh, that's fine, as long as it's beneficial to you. Like sometimes, once once disciples went to Rinpoche and said, "Oh, I'd like to go and listen to this other master," and he said, "You go and see. You take what's beneficial for you." So, just I repeat, at the end of the day, it's not important to be Buddhist or not be Buddhist or to be part of this tradition or not, because the day that we die, it's not like that. There's the Buddhists go here and the Christians go there. What's determining is whether a person with love or satisfaction or balance, has this. What makes the difference is who we are inside, independently of belongings here or following there. What's very important along this path is that it requires energy, constancy, and sincerity, and something that should be lived with joy. It's a constant joy, but the path is gradual. So, just to conclude, I ask all of you if there's something that you have found something. If you found something beneficial, please put it into practice. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I want to follow the Buddhist path. Where shall I begin?" Remember that there are many different approaches, and the approach that we follow, that comes from Lama Rinpoche, is an approach that is quite. More than being academic, like first you do this, then you do that. I mean, there is this academic one, and then there's also a friendly way where then we develop mutual trust and faith. And Lama Rinpoche always put more emphasis on this aspect, So if you like, there are those who like philosophy, so study philosophy. There are others who prefer to recite mantras, or maybe some people say, "Oh, I'm not I'm not really fond of this aspect. Is there something wrong with me? No, we're different people there, and we have different aspects, different approaches. So you need to find the way that is most suited to your spiritual growth. I thank you all for being here. We're going to do the final dedications. And traditionally, at the beginning, we generate the motivation. At the end, we dedicate this positive energy that we have created to something higher. So I'd like to dedicate to all of you who are here or following at home, and may these words not remain just as words, but may they help us generate clarity into who we want to be, and give us the strength to realize it. And I'd like to dedicate especially for those who are sick and this strange experience, a strange moment that we're still living in all of its aspects without getting into all the details of it. There are people who are having some very difficult moments. And as Lama Kanchen often said, may the great problems become small, and may the small problems just disappear. May the great sicknesses become small, and the small sicknesses disappear. Kutsar chin nam kartile chuchur te pardon loksan te petra me sasungi ruwe munse atune gyurachi ewa kuntu yadal lamada jame chiki bela luchuchi sadal mangi yote rapsone Lodži čanki go parnjurto šo. Antoni bre parnjurto parči. At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Repeat after me. Sam Chu Sutra, Chu Lam Chudra, Lam La Parche, Ion Warsho. May the mind become the Dharma. May the Dharma become the path. May the path be free from interferences. Lama Sengye Rinpoche, ke Lama Tencho Rinpoche, ke Lama Gendo Rinpoche, ke Yamne Kuntu Chula, Che Papu, Cho Sampo Pakyuta Shepa, Tu Chentempe Chinla Yarnoda, Pagetora Sapete Pache, Panelame Shila Che Papu. This is the prayer for the food prayer. Bon appetito. Thank you very much. Have a good lunch.